So how do you change condo bylaws? Bylaws can only be amended, repealed, or replaced by the passing of a special resolution. Any amendment, repeal, or replacement of the bylaws doesn't take effect until after the special resolution has passed and they have been registered as the land titles. This means that you can pass a special resolution to change your bylaws, but you're still operating under your previously registered bylaws until such time as you get your new ones registered with the land titles office. I mention this just because the land titles office is really, really backed up right now, and it's taking months to get anything registered. So there's a bit of a period where you may have passed new bylaws and sent them in to be registered, but you're still operating under your old bylaws because your new ones don't take an effect until they're actually registered. A special resolution is a resolution of the owners as opposed to a board resolution, which is just the board members, and that's what's required to pass a rule or a policy. So to pass the bylaws, you need a special resolution of the owners, which is either passed at a meeting with not less than 75% of all persons entitled to vote and representing not less than 75% of the total unit factors for all units voting in favor, or it can be a resolution in writing, which is signed by not less than 75% of all persons who would be entitled to vote, and again, representing not less than 75% of the unit factors of all units. All condo corps have 10,000 unit factors, but not all complexes necessarily assign their unit factors in the same way. In some cases, you would have, for example, in an easy world, you could have a 10-unit complex with 1,000 unit factors in each unit. In this case, it would be simple to calculate. To pass a special resolution, you'd need 8 out of 10 voting, 8 out of 10 owners voting in favor, because that would give you 80% of the owners. And because each unit has 1,000 unit factors, that would give you the 8,000 unit factors, or the more than 75% of the unit factors voting in favor. You could, however, in another 10-unit complex have, for example, 5 bigger units that have 1,500 unit factors each, 5 smaller units that have only 500 unit factors each. So in this case, if you had all 5 smaller units vote in favor and 3 of the bigger units vote in favor, you'd have 8 out of 10 units voting in favor, but you'd only have 7,000 unit factors voting in favor. So that wouldn't pass. You need both the 75% of units and unit factors. Once you have that and you've achieved the required number of special resolutions, then the board executes the certificate of special resolution, and the certificate and the bylaws are sent to the land titles office to be registered. Next slide, please, Holly. So passing bylaws, as you might imagine from that complex explanation of a special resolution, can sometimes be difficult. It can be difficult to get enough signatures, and this is largely because people just aren't engaged. It's not that they're voting no to the bylaw passing, they're just not voting one way or another. And you do really need a lot of engagement to get that 75%. So there's a couple of tips and tricks that we like to suggest. The first being to make sure that owners are engaged. When you're revising bylaws, don't make it an us versus them. Don't just have the board create a whole new set with a lawyer and then pass it to the owners and say, here, vote on this. We suggest letting the owners know that, this process is in the works, that there's a certain number of steps that are going to be taken, that a draft is going to be provided to the owners at a certain point, that there will be a chance for either a town hall or written questions, get the owners involved. Also, when you provide the draft bylaws, either for voting on or for the first discussion with the ownership, we usually do a summary letter that outlines the main changes that have happened to the bylaws. It's because bylaws are long. They're about 60-page document. A lot of the bylaws, especially you'll see later in the presentation, a lot of the bylaws are amended to keep up with legislation, and they're not optional. They have to be amended that certain way. So we like to include that in a summary letter so people can see, bylaws 6, 7, 8 were amended because they had to be. I also like to do a responsibility comparison, just a little sort of summary to make it simpler to understand. when you provide them for voting on, we say send out the special resolution actually on colored paper, on yellow paper or something. That way, when you're doing a follow-up, you can say to the owner, oh, remember that package we sent out with the yellow paper? We just need you to sign that yellow paper. And that twigs something with people. It's a lot easier to find in a stack of documents on your kitchen counter. If you're not getting a lot of responses one way or the other, we suggest board members either go door to door or make calls. Sometimes people have property managers do this, but it feels like you get better engagement when it's a board member because, you know, the board member lives there too, right? So they're invested in this process. Special resolutions can be provided electronically. You can sign them and take a picture of your signed special resolution. You can scan it in. You can use your e-signature. So that makes it easier as long as you let people know that it can be done that way. The one thing that we don't like to see is just an email that says, I agree to amending the bylaws or whatever. You want to actually get a signature on the piece of paper, but then you don't need the original paper back. And we also suggest to not put a deadline on the special resolution, but do put a date on the request form. Let people know when you would like to see it back by, but not actually a specific date that it will, you know, expire by if you haven't got the numbers.